I cannot count how many times over the last few years people have asked me, hey, when is Luminar going to be available for the iPad? Well, the answer, my friends, is today. That's what they're just announcing today. It is called Luminar for iPad, and their theme is Envision More. So this video is a first look at Luminar for iPad. I'm going to show you the app. I'm going to talk about what it is, what it isn't, some of the tech specs and things like that that I think you need to be aware of. We're going to dive into that in this video. The first thing I wanted to say is I do have an affiliate link down below. If you choose to use that, they give me a little bit of support, no extra cost to you. And of course, I'm going to be here making a lot of free educational videos about this app because it's fun, it's cool, and it's reimagined in terms of how you edit on an iPad, in terms of the user interface. It's really fun or really interesting. So if you choose to use that link, I appreciate that very much. And if you don't, hey, we're still friends. I'm going to be hanging out making videos anyway. Let's go ahead and get going. Envision More, that is their theme. And as you're going to see, this user interface is really interesting and really different and really cool. So we're going to dive into that. I want to talk about what it is and what it isn't real quick. Powerful editing experience on the go. It has a very familiar feel because it is Luminar. It's not some completely different app. It's called Luminar for iPad. So it's got many of the same tools, but not all of them. But it's got many of the same tools that Luminar has. If you already use Luminar, I think you're going to jump into this app. And once you get accustomed to the new user interface, because it's interesting, I love it. Once you kind of get your arms around that, you're going to be flying through edits. It's a lot of fun. That's what I'm talking about in the reimagined and creative UI. It's really interesting. Super easy and convenient for mobile editing. It's a great alternative for quick edits. And for me, it's way, way better than editing on a phone. I like to take photos with my iPhone. I do not like to edit photos on my iPhone. It's this tiny little thing, and with thumbs and all, I don't like it. So iPad editing of iPhone shots is a great use for this one. Now, what is it not? What is this app not for? It's not a replacement for Luminar Neo. Luminar Neo is still here, still growing, still getting new features, new stuff's coming. We'll be talking about that as it's available. This is a separate app. It's not a replacement. Just wanted to clarify that. It's also not really planned as a direct competitor to Lightroom Mobile. Different audiences, I think different uses as well. And in full fairness and full disclosure, I would say it's not a full-featured editor just yet. There are some things it doesn't have that you may want or may feel like you need. But considering this is version 1.0, it's really cool and really powerful. I'm having a lot of fun with it. What does it have? Well, it does have Develop, which you're accustomed to in Luminar. It does support RAW files, but I want to point out, it doesn't have things like camera profiles and all that. It's not a full-featured RAW editor. But it will support RAW files. You've got erase and crop, and you've got a lot of the familiar tools from Luminar, including things like sky replacement, which is really cool, and of course, many of the other AI tools that you probably use all the time, just like I do. I live in Accent AI, Structure AI, things like that. So I'm very happy that they're in this app. I think you're going to love that as well. Pricing wise, it's a subscription service, $5 for 1 month, $20 for 6 months. Or $30 for a year, which includes a free trial. Again, there's an affiliate link down below. And also, it is available on the Vision OS device. If you have a Vision Pro, you can use it there as well, which I think is really cool. I don't have one, but maybe you do. For me, how am I going to use this? I foresee iPhone photo editing on this, where I'm going to be out in the field. I'll have my laptop. I'm going to airdrop it. I'm going to edit. I'm going to share. Quick, easy, painless, and powerful. Travel images for sharing. Like when we've been in Iceland, I feel like I can just quickly airdrop a photo that I just took over here to my iPad, make some edits and share it with the group or share it socially if I want to. That's another use case, I think, is quick edits for social media. Sometimes you're out or you're traveling and you don't want to get the laptop and do all this stuff. You just kind of want to do a quick edit and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. It's fun. It's beautiful. Check out what I shot today. It's not a finished, complete professional edit, but it's a quick on-the-go edit. This is perfect for that. And for me, being occasionally lazy at night, I like to sit on the couch, maybe binging a show of some sort. I can just edit some photos as I'm kind of passively consuming a TV show and also kind of passively editing. That's a lot of fun, and this app is perfect for that. Important things to know. I don't have the full tech specs to be fair, but I believe it's iPad 4th generation, iPad Pro 4th generation and higher, and I'm fairly certain it's iOS 17 and higher, but I feel certain that by the time this is launched, which is now, at that link below, you will see the full tech specs. I want to point out it does not create a new Luminar catalog. It is not even syncing with the Luminar Neo catalog. It's not syncing with that app at all. So I wanted to point that out. It's not a plugin to that app. It's not a plugin from Photos on your iPad. And so it is effectively a standalone app. However, as you can see, you can add images from your iPad from any files that you have on there, AirDrop of course, and from Photos where you can pull images from Photos. And when you save an image after edit, you can save it back to Photos. So it has some interaction with Photos on your iPad, but it doesn't have plugin capability from Photos, nor does it operate or sync with Luminar Neo. I suspect over time that stuff is going to change as it becomes more full-featured and becomes a more important part of the overall editing experience. It does not have masking tools, also does not have layers. And that's why I said it's not really considered, in my opinion, a replacement or a direct competitor to Lightroom Mobile, which has masking and is a nice app, but it doesn't have those tools right now. Again, I think that we'll have that in the future. And as I understand it, no plans for an Android version at this time. It is iPad only. And I already mentioned it's not a full raw editor, no camera profiles and things like that. So that's a quickie, if you will, on that sort of stuff. And what I want to do now is mirror my display, and I want to walk through what this app looks like because it's super cool, it's super fun, and I'm loving it. I pulled in some photos from Apple Photos on my iPad, which was synced with the cloud, and then I cut it off. So this is a combination of screenshots of when I'm taking pictures of my travel plans, to my dog, to my lunch, to my daughter, plus some real photos. The point is, these photos it came in through Photos, Apple Photos on the iPad. Here's some from Iceland and that sort of thing. But you can see over here, you got different options here, or different categories, I should say, based on what's in there. And that probably looks familiar if you've used Apple Photos. I'm going to go ahead and go down to RAW. Some of these RAW files were taken with iPhones. Some were taken with my Sony cameras. All you do is you click once to edit a photo, and it will load it up in the editing screen. And you will see already these icons are very different and very interesting. I'm going to get to those in just a minute. First, I want to cover a couple of things, and I'm going to come back, by the way, and make more videos. So this is a first look. This is not an end-all, be-all kind of video. You've got a familiar crop option here and a familiar erase option. Over here, you got access to your Skylum account as well as things like that. And then you've got sharing where you can share, and that'll drop it to like text, just like any Apple device where you can share. But you can also save back to Photos, as I mentioned earlier. Down here, you've got three different options. This one with the dial with the little dots around it that's kind of in the center, that's your main editing screen. And you can see over here on the right-hand side, familiar look and feel with Luminar Neo. You can see some of the tools that you already know and love and probably use quite a bit in Luminar. But you got a couple of other options. If you click the one with the clouds, this is sky replacement. You're able to go in, and they've got a new selection of skies here on the iPad app, and that allows you to go in and do that. And you can also add in your own skies. I'll come back and make more videos about these things. You've also got controls up here for controlling the look and feel of the sky that you add. And this little film icon here is for different presets that are built in. You can see that these are all included. And this dial with the fun numbers, which kind of mimics an old dial like on an old film camera, that is actually the amount slider or the opacity or intensity slider for any preset you do choose. I'm not going to choose any of those. I'm just going to go in and go straight to editing. I think that's where you're going to be blown away the most and have probably some questions about how this works. Now, having gotten over here, I'm going to go straight to develop, and you can see all these icons are really interesting. This is temperature, so you can see it's cooler to the left and warmer to the right. So I'm going to go a little bit cooler. And of course, this is tint. That's green. I don't want green. I want a little bit of magenta. I'm going to play a little bit with the highlights and maybe move those down, maybe move the shadows a little bit. This is the exposure slider. You can see how you have control over this. Whites and blacks, these go up and down, so that's pretty cool. This wiggly line is your contrast. So you can come in, make adjustments to the contrast. This is vignette, if you want to add a vignette. And this icon here, that is both saturation and vibrance. So drag it to the right, you can see anytime you're using these tools that there's some text that shows up above. Drag it to the right, saturation goes up. Drag it up, and vibrance goes up. So I'm doing a little bit of both by moving it up and to the right. Conversely, I could go left and down and get negative in both. But I like my colors, and this is kind of a fun sunrise shot. I'm going to do a little bit of saturation and vibrance, and maybe go back and pull back a tiny bit on that blue, give it a tiny bit more warmth, and I've got a pretty nice looking photo. Now this icon here is on-off, as you can kind of tell. It looks like an on-off switch for that particular filter. I'm going to close that and move on. And by the way, you will notice that little dot there, which is just like in Luminar Neo, where it lets you know that you've used a filter. Accent AI is super fun. It's just a dial, and you can crank it. Don't recommend cranking it, just like I don't in Luminar Neo. But on this one, maybe I'm going to go about, not quite halfway. I think that's pretty fun. I'm going to close that. I'll go into Structure AI, and you can increase structure to crank it up, or as you've probably seen in many of my previous videos, scenes like this that are kind of foggy and a little bit of mood, I'm going to go a little bit left and kind of smooth it out, take that structure out of the photo. So like I said, very familiar use as with Luminar Neo. Relight AI, this one's fun and cool, and while I don't talk about it a whole lot in Luminar Neo, I do use it some, and I think this is a pretty interesting use here, where you basically have flashlights. The one pointing up is basically higher. That's kind of the distant one, or the one in the sky, and the one pointing down is more about the foreground. And then of course you can use this dial to bring them a little bit closer together. That's adjusting where that line is separating the near and far. So you may be familiar with how that works based on using it in Luminar Neo. I'm going to close that, go into landscape. See how fun this is? I mean, these icons are just cool. This one here is Golden Hour, one of my favorites, and I'm so happy that Golden Hour is in this app because I use it all the time, especially on sunset photo. I mean, it's perfect for this kind of stuff. So this is, you just drag it, and that's going to increase the amount of Golden Hour. This one is, you can see the icon for the tree, so that's foliage enhancer. I don't really need it here. There's a little bit of green in the distance. I don't need it. And then this one is dehaze and fog. So go up, and that adds some fog. Go down, and that's adding some dehaze. And so I'm going to go back up. I'm going to add a little bit of fog, make it a little bit more moody and a little bit more foggy. By the way, if you think, oh, it's getting a little bit too bright, don't forget, you can always go back and you can play with the highlights a little bit more if you need to. Pull those down a little bit and then close develop. You've got details here, small, medium, and large. You've got the ability to adjust those. I won't be doing that in this photo. You've also got curves. I mean, you can just come in and do the same thing like you may do with curves in Luminar Neo, and just adjust that contrast and create a little bit more intensity in the image. And of course, then you have the color curves for each of the different color main color channels, R, G, and B. And last, of course, not least, you have monochrome. I do want to point out I'm on a beta version, so I'm recording this prior to launch, which means once you see this app and take it yourself, there may be some minor slight differences. I don't really expect there to be any, but there could be. I just wanted to point out that I'm recording this on a beta, so things could slightly change. But that is Luminar for iPad. I almost said Luminar Neo for iPad because I say Luminar Neo so much, but that is the Luminar for iPad. It's super fun. It's super creative and interesting. And I've spent so much time just playing with these dials and all these sliders because it's so interesting, and it's such a fun kind of creative take on how you edit on an iPad. I just love it. I think it's very original, and you can come up with some really, really beautiful photos. If I share, maybe I want to save it to photos, I can click and save it to my photos, and now it's dropped back into photos for me so that I will have it later. That's my first look, my friends. I'll be back soon with more talking about Luminar for iPad. It's a fun app. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I hope it gives you a good idea of how it works. Check it out at the link below. Leave me comments, questions if you have them. I'll be back soon, my friends. Thanks for watching. You guys take care. And until next time, adios.